Unnecessary intro song to totally waste your time.
You know, a lot of people have very rational questions too. What happened with Charlie Kirk? Who's the shooter? Who was he talking to? Was it a government thing? Was it a team? How many people were involved? And I've been looking and I've been, acting like I've had a headache for the last day, so I haven't spent as much time as usual, but just consuming, looking at all the same shit you guys are looking at, following every lead and blah, blah, blah. Anytime something gets... But let me just give you some... This is my thoughts on it. I like to use Occam's razor with things. It's really fun to think, oh, Netanyahu did it. He hypnotized the kid and did it. It was the Jews, or it was the government, it was the FBI, it's evil rogue. It's maybe even Kash Patel did it because it's a bigger thing to get Palantir. It's a whole step. Oh, everybody's got all these. This is the next thing predicts. But let's just look at it. Let's just not avoid. This is what when people say conspiracy, I don't like the term conspiracy theory because we all know that it's used as a pejorative, even though it's actually true, you're going, I'm making a theory that people were conspiring, So there's really nothing wrong with those two words being used together, except for the fact that they're used as a pejorative so often, right? But be that as it may, with that disclaimer, one of the problem with theories in general, beyond conspiracy theories, just theories, is that sometimes people can come up with a theory very early on before facts are in. And there's this, I don't know what it is, a survival mechanism this to make us feel good about ourselves, make us feel smart or not be embarrassed. But a lot of times we get addicted to our theory first. And then if any information that comes in and challenges our theory, I don't know why I'm not like this. I don't mind having my theories blasted off. It's actually a relief to me when I think something might be going on and I get an answer like, oh, that makes a lot more sense. I like to just go, okay, move on to something else. But a lot of people just get stubborn. They dig in their heels and they feel this need to, connect it to Netanyahu, an evil man. But here's what the problem is you skip the logical things. And one of the most logical explanations, the Occam's razor works like this. The easiest explanation is usually the right one. Of course, that's not always true, but Occam's razor, it's just more chances than not. The most likely explanation is the one that fits. Look at the reaction. What does the reaction tell you? The reaction tells you, and not only to this one, but to Luigi too, and anytime when a horrific thing happens, where tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people react with glee, sickening, disgusting glee. What does that tell you? Does it tell you that a bunch of people were just born evil? No, that's not the story you're telling. There's a bunch of people that have somehow been convinced that Charlie Kirk and Christianity and white Christianity and people who pursue goodness and promote good conservative values, meaning values that have been around for thousands of years, by the way, and they have been conserved because they have worked for a long time, not crazy radical ideas, but very conservative old values, not extreme values, but the most basic of conservative values, the most time-tested and proven ones, But we've had, look, we know now, anybody that was in the dark last week, this week knows that the minds of many of the youth, the ones that have gone through schooling for a long time, are straight up poisoned. And it's horrific and it's sad, but we know how we got here now. We know what we did. Okay? Let's not be in the dark about what we as a society did. We allowed leftist perverts, communists, anti-humanists, anti-family, anti-traditionalists infiltrate our schooling system, right? So this generation we're seeing right now, Generation Z, it's the most completely indoctrinated at all because even their teachers are fully indoctrinated. Like, I'm 58, okay? So even I got part of it. I got a full diet of white people are bad, Hitler, slavery, you name it. White people are at the fault for everything, you know. We were at the beginning of it, my generation, but we still had some rationality. We didn't have gay flags hanging in our classrooms. We didn't have teachers telling us to think about our wieners, you know, and question what we weren't thinking about our sexuality when we were 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 every single year with flags. Was that pretty rainbow flag mean, teacher? Oh, it means, you know, you should stick your dick in whatever hole you want to. Just squish it around, see how it feels, you know? Insane. We just allowed that. That's what that flag means. It doesn't mean anything other than that. And that we allowed them to use rainbow colors as if they're not directly advertising to children. I mean, that's the part about this whole thing is like a lot of it we just need to punch ourselves in the face and go, it was right there in front of us the whole time. And we just let it happen. We just handed over our children to these people. And then they grew up and they were indoctrinated. They became teachers, and we still kept handing more over to them. And they were indoctrinated, you know, through the schools and then through TikTok. I went over this in the last recording. The algorithms to cordon them off and remind them, cis white male, bad. Christianity, bad. You know, humanity, bad. If you're a human, you're ruining the planet with your gas and your carbon dioxide coming out of your mouth. Look at this polar bear sinking on this piece of ice. You know, you're a white male. Oh, you're a white male. Literally, that's the tone. Oh, you're a white male. These kids, that kid, Tyler Robinson, a kid that grew up in Utah like me, with a nice Mormon family. Well, his was probably nicer than mine. Mine got divorced a billion times, and I had, 18 siblings in total, including halves and steps. Never lived under the same roof as my dad. So he got a better upbringing than me, a more traditional upbringing. But regardless, it was pretty, raised around good values. I rebelled because also music, Devo, all these other forces telling me, your religious stuff, hokey pokey. And I went through the whole thing. I went on a Mormon mission and everything. I was late to change my mind because the indoctrination didn't affect me in the same way, But anyway, I relate with these kids. And then today I watched the video of his furry boyfriend that's claiming to transition into female, which is an impossible procedure, but also a furry. But, if you say cis white male bad, the first off-ramp, the only off-ramp is to not be that. And how do you do that? Well, I'm trans now. I'm not a cis white male. I got rid of 2 of those bad adjectives. I'm trans now. I'm trans. And according to the algorithms, the Discord algorithms and the TikTok algorithms and Instagram algorithms, I now am free from that awful title. I'm no longer burdened with the title of cis white male. Oh, and by the way, humanity, I'm not even a male anymore. I'm not even a human. I'm a furry. I'm an animal. I mean, that's how simple it is. So you can trace it back to M16 or Mossad or FBI or CIA, but the evidence is clear. there aren't 1,000, there aren't 10,000 of kids right now speaking directly with Mossad and finding a rifle drop point. Maybe there are. I doubt it. I think it's more likely that there are tens of thousands of kids that have been fully indoctrinated, and you can see them right now. They've all been screen grabbed on TikTok. People that have been, their minds have been poisoned with lies, and just literally poison. I don't want to even get away from that at all. It's poison. When you tell a person that they're bad because of their race or because they're Christian, because when you fundamentally want to separate them from their parents, when you put ideas in their mind to make them hate their parents and talk about their sexual desires with a stranger at school, an adult stranger at school with rainbow-colored hair and rainbow flags and revolutionary pictures hanging up. I remember a couple of years ago, I saw this thing, some story, I can't remember what it was, but some parent was upset that they found that their daughter was being indoctrinated, and they did a sneak into what ended up being my high school, West Jordan High School. And she took her camera in there and went to a classroom that I think I had, where I was. And it was all rainbow flags and revolutionaries. And I was like going, in my hometown, the good little community of West Jordan, Utah, has been completely infiltrated by communist, leftist, evil scumbags who fundamentally, the whole core of socialism and communism is built on resentment. And its fundamental is to the destruction of the nuclear family. Outwardly so. That's not a hidden thing. You ask any honest Marxist what they want to do. They want to destroy the family because that's the patriarchy. That represents the patriarchy. So that's where feminism comes from. Divide, divide, divide. The holy partnership between male and female. It's got to be the first to go. Got to destroy that bond, that family unit. And feminism did that. They did that. But they weren't done. They had to keep going. We got to just not have any families at all. Hell, buy some babies. But that's not a family. You marry a gay guy and you guys go out and buy a baby. That's an option, I guess. Well, we're pro-family. Look, here's our icon of two men purchasing a child that will never have a mother. It's sick. It's sick stuff we're talking about here. But, turning the kids gay. Well, just, how does it feel in your wiener? Are you a girl or a boy? Some people don't know. Do you know? I brought in a guest today. This is a drag queen. She's going to tell us a story. Don't mind the Adam's apple and the balls hanging out. She's a wonderful lady. Isn't she wonderful? Isn't she making you laugh? Maybe I want to be like that. This is sick stuff. And we allowed it to happen. We let it happen. We protested a little bit. Posted on, this shouldn't happen. But did we stop it? Some people pulled their kids out of school, but I am shocked by how many of my so-called friends didn't. It won't happen. My friends in Utah even, it won't happen here. Suddenly their kids are, I got one of my best friends in the world has got 5 beautiful daughters, and half of them turned out gay. They're not gay. I got a niece that says she's gay. She's not gay. I know the difference. All my friends are gay down here. I know the difference between a born this way gay and a molded this way gay. Okay? And I think most of us can tell. You look at Richard Simmons, you don't go, he was molded into a gay man. He was born gay. Okay? My best friend growing up, his little brother, I met him when he was 2. He was gay when he was 2. All right? Not in that he was thinking about men, but he was super feminine. We could all see when he grew up and into a fully formed gay man, we all saw it coming from the very beginning. And you all know those kinds of gays. We all do, you know. But that's not all of them. Not now, especially not now. Now, it used to be that you could just spot a gay and you go, gay person. And it wasn't because of their clothes. It wasn't because of their hairdo. It was just because of their look. The femininity in the face. A little bit of pudginess. The fat falling on the hips a certain way. The movement. It's funny because I take care of these pigeons and I don't think I've been wrong. They say that it's hard to tell a male from a female pigeon, but I can tell. I can tell. They look so much similar, but it's just the behavior. Just even the way a female pigeon blinks and moves her head. It's feminine. And then you have masculine pigeons, But you can see that in humanity. You can find a feminine man. And that doesn't mean the feminine man's always going to be gay, but chances are higher. When you meet a really feminine man, you're not shocked when he's gazing lovingly at a picture of a man, I mean, come on, nobody wants to see Richard Simmons trying to make out with a woman. That would make you barf, So anyway, but now you see just a bunch of straight kids claiming to be gay or claiming to be trans because they just simply don't want to be burdened with the title of being cis, what the fuck ever that means, cisgendered. That is used disparagingly, okay? And they don't want it. So they say, I'm not. And guess what? When you're young, if you're told that it's bad to be straight, and let's not lie, that's what they're told. It's bad to be straight. You're going to get, and if everybody around you, when I was young, if you were gay or whatever, people were naturally repelled by it, and that we weren't taught to be straight or gay. Nobody was taught to be anything. But the natural reaction to gay kids was to tease them. Tease people that were any bit different, Not saying it's right, I'm not saying it's wrong, but it's indicative of how we come out naturally programmed to be like, what the fuck's going on with you? Why are you acting like a girl? Or why is that girl acting like a boy? But now that's all been trained out of them at an early age. And so it's all okay to be gay, in fact, encouraged to be gay. So if you get two kids making out and putting their hands down each other's pants, hey, friction will do a lot of work. You can really fuck with a kid's whole development if you get in there early enough. And that's what they're doing. That's what they've done. That's what they did to Tyler. That's what they did to Lance Twiggs. Okay? And you can put some of this on conservatism. You can put some of it on the church for maybe being too judgmental. But I don't think even that exists anymore because now the church is way too accepting as far as I'm concerned. It's just like society has evolved where you can't question it. If somebody says they're gay, you've just got to go, you go, girl. That's the only option. Because if you say anything else, question it even a bit, you're the evil one. And weirdly, that's even affected Mormon and what used to be conservative religions. Even those people, after all, if you bombard people with hateful messages and telling people they're bad enough, eventually people will just go. And parents want to love their kids. They're doing the best they can. So, when their kid comes home and says they're gay, especially after they've been seeing every single Netflix series, you're supposed to, your only option is to say, you're so wonderful. I love you no matter what. Not like, are you sure? Why do you think that? Why do you think you're gay? Where did this start? Who told you this? No investigation because that's homophobic. And you can't go to the school. You can't poke around because if you start asking a teacher what books they like, oh, you're homophobic. Like literally in the last administration, you could put on an FBI watch list if you start asking about what the kids are reading. Literally. I want to know what my kids are reading. You're an enemy. You're a terrorist threat. You white nationalist. That's how far we've come. So when you look at Tyler Robinson and you look at Lance Twiggs, these are kids that have gone through that whole system. And when you look at these kids that are cheering, those kids also went through it. And I don't want to do this weird thing where, they're all victims and therefore we let them all off the hook. But maybe I'm doing a little bit of Jesus, forgive them, the Father, for they know not what they do. I mean, I think that somewhere they do know, but we gotta take some blame here. Okay, we handed over our kids. Maybe laziness. I got no room to talk. I gave my child up for adoption. I got a woman pregnant the first time I ever had sex, very first time, and it was with a woman that I didn't think we'd ever get along. I don't think we would have. We're very different people. I don't want to get into the whole story, but we got married to legitimize the pregnancy. But after 2 weeks of that, she took off to California, and I didn't want to chase her because I didn't feel like the whole thing was going to work. I tried to call the wedding off on the day of. And she cried so hard, I was just like, I got to go through with it now. But I was raised in divorce, so divorce was like an option. Maybe it shouldn't have been, but if my parents were so big fans of divorce, they got divorced twice each, So, and it was her idea to give the child up for adoption. And I agreed because I wanted the kid to have a good family. I knew then that I didn't want my offspring to have a dad in Utah and a mom in California who didn't like each other and traveling back and forth. I instinctively knew that that wasn't good because I don't think I'm a good person. I think a lot of my problems stem from the fact that I was never raised under the same roof as my dad. And I know my dad loved me, and I never, we were always together every weekend or whatever, but it wasn't an ideal situation. It's not an ideal situation when your mom doesn't love your dad. In fact, they don't like each other, So what did I do? I signed the papers, and some other family got to raise my offspring. Biggest mistake I ever made, without a doubt. I hesitate to say that though because I don't want to cheapen her family life. You can't. It's hard to say it was a mistake for me, but I'm not going to say it's a mistake for her or for her family. Two things can be true. Mistake for me, not for them. Anyway, I'm just saying that out of respect. But so anyway, I'm just saying that I accept blame too. And it's been a long trudge getting here. Divorce wasn't common way back when. And then my generation is the generation of divorce. In the 70s, Kramer versus Kramer, everybody was getting divorced and everything was about divorce. Feminism creeped in and divorce was a perfectly rational thing to do. Oh, you're not feeling good about your relationship, feel a little bit lonely, don't like doing the dishes, get a divorce. You've come a long way, baby. Start smoking. And what happened? Everybody got divorced. Instead of sticking it out, instead of toughing it out and figuring out how to love each other, they got divorces. And then that generation turns into my generation. My generation turns into the millennials. The millennials turns into Gen Z. And by this time, with the incrementals, you got kids wanting to chop off their dicks and slice off their tits and turn into animals. And it's because we let the dirty fucking communists and the Marxists into our system. And that's what we're dealing with here. So as fun as it may be to try to pin this on Netanyahu or make up some grand thing that's a government thing, it's like it might be. It might be. I'm not saying it's not. I definitely need to know who did the rifle drop. I definitely need a good explanation for why George Zinn said, shoot me, shoot me, shoot me, and gave him cover as he ran, even if it wasn't related. I still need to hear George Zinn. I still need to hear somebody did say, one friend, he said, he's known to show up at all Republican things and cause commotions. So, okay. But can you give me some video of that? Can you give me 5 videos of George Zinn acting the fool at 5 different Republican gatherings? That would help. Because to have one Ashkenazi Jew, the only Ashkenazi Jew probably in all of Utah, certainly Happy Valley at that time, suddenly act as a decoy, as a white rabbit. I need an explanation for that, okay? I need an explanation for the rifle drop. Who dropped it? You talked about it. You guys mentioned the rifle drop in the chats, in the Discord. I need to know. I need to know who's in those Discords. I need the IP addresses. I need to know if any of them came from Israel or the White House or DC or the FBI office. I need full transparency on this shit, you know? I need to see pictures of that rifle not assembled and not in a cardboard box, because I know he wasn't carrying a cardboard box. I get that you would probably carry a rifle-shaped cardboard box if you thought that you were going to recover a cardboard box, but I maybe want to see the gun the way you found it. You know, I'm sure you took pictures of it the way you found it. You put your little markers on it with the 13, 14, 1, 2 arrow. I need to see those pictures, okay? But still, beyond that, Occam's razor, there are tens of thousands of Luigis and Tyler Robinsons and Jesse Twiggs out there. We saw that. We know these kids are radical. Okay, and it's going to ramp up because they made Luigi into a hero. They're making Tyler into a hero. Okay? So we're not done with this. We're not done with this. And if we spend too much time trying to pin it on Netanyahu or M16 or the FBI or CIA or finding the regular players, you know, that we all love to just believe, you know, CIA, it's deep state. Might be, but I'm telling you it already is anyway. Because if you just follow the trails from the teachers, start with the teachers. Who were his teachers? I want to know everything they taught him. And if they taught him evil things, I want them the fuck out of the classroom, and I want them away from children forever. You know? This is what I want Trump to be, the authoritarian that they say he is. I want him to use every ounce of his political power as an executive of the United States of America. And I want him to get rid of everybody. I want a total 100% purge of these radical leftist Marxists out of the government. And what is it, you know how you're a radical? It's if you don't denounce the radicals. If you're not denouncing the radicals, if you're a moderate Democrat and you're not denouncing them, well, then you're a radical. The only way you can prove that you're not a radical is by fucking denouncing the actual radicals, by turning them in, by joining the team. Because if you're not getting rid of them too, then we're going to get rid of you. Right? This is a good and evil thing. It's not right versus left. It's good versus evil. It is evil to plant ideas into a child's mind that he is evil, unless he becomes trans and a furry and shoots somebody in the face or in the neck for saying something, for just simply promoting conservative values. So that's what I'm trying to say, is let's not get off track. We got to stay on track. I love what's happening. I love that finally the right seems to have woken up and realized, okay, we're playing this game. We've been anti-cancel culture this whole time. Now suddenly we're going, I get it now. We got to fight fire with fire. You canceled us. Well, guess what? Here it comes. And I just love it. I want every one of these sicko leftists to feel the full pressure. The full pressure. Lose their jobs. I want them to be scorned in public. You know? I want them to be shunned and mocked and jeered. I want life to be hard for these people who have poisoned the minds. And if their minds are poisoned, I don't know how we make room for them. You got to show grace. You got to show grace. You got to remember that they were poisoned. So if there's an opportunity, if that rabid dog in the corner is, if you can reach out and hug it and get a hug in there and change it, fine. But while it's frothing at the mouth, you got to get it in a cage. Okay? You got it in a cage. It's going to take some, you got to separate that shit. Get it into a hospital, into a church, into a something. But we just can't let these sick, poisoned people wander around continuing to mutilate themselves. I mean, let's be honest, it's kind of a self-selecting thing. It's sad. It's sad that this whole generation of kids was poisoned to the point where most of them will never have kids. If they haven't chemically castrated themselves or physically castrated themselves, there are so many people right now, fathers and mothers, who are witnessing their children become the end of their bloodline. So many see that their kids are never going to have kids because of this or that. Well, things are too expensive. The world's going to end in 12 years anyway. Humanity's terrible. I would never bring a child into this world. Kids are really poisoned, man. But this is nothing to cheer. It's nothing to cheer that these kids, it's fun. It's like edgy to say, well, at least they won't breed, But the sadness is that they didn't have to be poisoned. And the people that poison them need to be dealt with. The poison needs to be sucked out, And I think we can do it. I think we're getting off to a good start, quite frankly. I think that there's been a death of moderate Republicans, right? I think that being a patient, moderate Republican is, well, let's see how long it lasts, Let's see how long this rage lasts. I hope it lasts long enough to get some shit done, but a lot of people were radicalized, and I don't know, but it feels to me like there are a lot of good people that call themselves Democrats that are now running to the right. None that I've noticed in my family, which is weird. And it's probably because I've been sending text messages that are a little probably heavier than they need to be, but I'm pissed. I'm angry. I'm really angry. I'm really angry at so-called moderate Democrats that aren't speaking up. The people that aren't denouncing, this assassination. Your silence. I'm sorry. I'm sounding like a leftist now. Your silence is violence. It does amount to tacit support, though, for that execution. And I feel it. You feel it. I feel it from a couple of my siblings that are ignoring me. Not even responding to this, though I've called them to repentance. as arrogant as I'm asserting myself as the older sibling, I get to do that, and I'm not going to apologize for it, and that's not saying that I don't have things to repent for either. I need to make an apology tape. I'm going to take some time because I've got some apologizing to do myself. I abandoned my people. I was swayed by this leftist shit, and I moved to San Francisco, and I treated people poorly. I treated Mormons poorly. I acted like I was better than them, I did the fucking intellectual thing. How can you believe in Jesus? What, do you believe in Santa Claus too? I went and did that whole thing. It was wrong, and I need to apologize. I really do. I've apologized to some people. I haven't properly apologized to my brothers and sisters yet, because it's a little bit tricky when they don't want your apology and your apology ends up sounding like an insult. Do you know what I mean? It's hard to apologize to somebody for making them the way that they are, or helping to make them the way that they are, if they think that the way they are is totally awesome. Because it just becomes a backhanded insult, or a backhanded compliment. Is that what you call it? Yeah. So I haven't quite figured out how to do that, because I wasn't a good older brother. I wasn't. I was for a while. When we were young, I was funny. I was kind. I wasn't mean. I didn't punch people. I usually broke up the fights. I wasn't violent. My job was just to be funny and entertaining, And I think I was. But then when I got out of the church and that was met with scorn, I overcorrected and I kind of got bitter, And then I felt it like they abandoned me, when really on paper, I did abandon the church. I did. And I abandoned Utah. I picked up and moved. But I felt abandoned by them, Anyway, that's complicated shit. So right now, the world's got a lot of introspection that needs to happen. A lot on the right, too. We're not done. I mean, until the right fully embraces, until people fully embrace their role in it, Sure, we can say we're brainwashed, and I was. I was brainwashed, so were you. So there's a little bit of, there's some wiggle room there. But there were warning signs, And a lot of us were just too lazy or too complacent or too scared, Some of you are still too scared of saying something on your Facebook, too scared to say something at church. I have a couple friends that have called me, dear friends that I love, that have called me because they knew, these are people that called me from Utah, by the way. They said they never would have dreamt that they would be talking to their liberal friend in San Francisco about how they can't say the conservative things they want to say. My little brother, one of my little brothers, he says, everybody I work around in Utah is liberals. I can't tell them I'm conservative. This is in Utah, and they're calling me in San Francisco because I'm the guy that they can speak freely with. So there is still some courage that needs to be found on the right, and I think that people are finding it. But part of that courage is really just self-examination, going, what the fuck did I do? How did I contribute to this problem? Because it's only really when we understand what we did wrong that we can really get in there and fix it. And I don't know how to fix it with love, but that's got to be the direction, I don't know how we do it because it's so hard to get around the rage. When somebody expresses such an evil hatred that we're seeing expressed, it is so hard to not just hate right back. It really is. And I'm not even saying that you shouldn't. But when you sit back and think about it, you go, how productive is that? Anyway, there's a lot to do. I'm committed to doing my part. I don't know what that looks like. I know that I'm lazy, and it's better to just make music and talk to pigeons and squirrels and all that stuff, but I got work to do. I got to figure this shit out. We got to figure it out. You got to figure it out. Because we can't let another generation get poisoned. Hell, we got to make sure there is another generation. You know what I mean? I think. Don't you think? Or do we just not care? Do we just go, there doesn't need to be another generation? Do we just let them win their giant depopulation program? I don't think we're supposed to let them win. I don't feel complacent with that. I don't feel good about that. I don't know why. But something in me tells me that humanity is supposed to continue. And they're supposed to enjoy the beauty and the miracle of everything. Just look at the miracle of life. Just look at the things. Can you imagine not creating more souls to enjoy it and to love it? You know, it's tempting to say, I don't want to bring kids into the world. They're going to be communist perverts running everything and chopping dicks off and slicing off tits and pretending to be furries. But we can change that. It doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this way. We can root all these evil motherfuckers out. We can do it, but we have to do it individually. We have to be calling. We have to do the campaigns. We have to be stronger and more radical than the left when it comes to, oh no, you don't get to say people deserve to die for saying what they say. You don't get to do that. You don't get to have a job. You do not get to influence or be around kids if that's the type of shit you're teaching. You do not get to earn my tax dollars, you fireman or you cop or you soldier or whoever you are that's saying this shit on my tax dollars. No. You lawyer that's manipulating our system, you know, that's supposed to be a sworn officer of the court to uphold our Constitution, you know. Here's what I suggest. I say when somebody, you know, I said this in another recording, I'm going to say it again. If you say, I don't believe in free speech, you should be like, okay, $500 fine. Wait, what? I have free speech. I can say I don't support free speech. Another $500 fine. 2 more and you go to jail. We have to protect free speech from people infringing upon it. Just like we protect people from threats. I can't just go up to you and say, I'm going to kill you if you say something. But saying I'm against free speech is that. Because the only way to stop free speech is with violence. There's no other way to stop free speech than with violence. So if you say, I don't like free speech, you are endorsing violence against people who say things you don't like. So we should just immediately slap them with a fine and take their free speech away. Your wish is granted. No more free speech for you. You know? You want to have a religion? Freedom of religion? You don't get to have a religion that believes in abanishing and abolishing all other religions. You know? We need to do these things. We have to. We don't have any choice. I know I'm sounding like a repetitive idiot right now, but we need to. This is something we need to wake up every day. We need to think the same things every day. We need to set our missions every day because we have to do this. And you know what? To make things easier, I was thinking about this earlier because it's fun and it's funny. And if you want to know how to take this path and how to move forward, is just ask yourself, what would Charlie do? What would Charlie Kirk do? I know I feel silly as a 58-year-old man asking myself what a 31-year-old big-headed dude would do in this situation. But he's actually a really good role model. You go into it, even if you don't want to do it, you do it. You engage with the enemy in a firm, friendly, and kind way, but you get it done. Now, I'm not saying we need to be exactly like Charlie because he was a little bit nicer than we need to be. You know, we don't need to be nice when we start arresting judges. You know, and by the way, I probably shouldn't say that. What would Charlie do? You know, because actually, quite frankly, I was also thinking maybe Charlie, what he did, demonstrated what we shouldn't do. I should be ending this recording, but I'm just going to go off on one more little tangent in that, you know, it would be fair to look at Charlie's mission and go, maybe it's not good to meet with the enemy. Maybe when people are fully possessed by demons, maybe it's better to stay far away from them. Maybe it's better to create a situation where they come to you, where you set your example far away. Because his mission was to go, and I relate with this. I was like that too. I was a proselyte. I went on a mission. I moved to San Francisco. Believe it or not, it wasn't just to get away from Utah, but this is embarrassing to say, but I felt like I had a mission to shine the light to the lost souls. I wasn't successful. I failed. I failed that mission, but I did have that in my mind. You can take the kid out of Utah, but you can't take the Utah out of the kid. Anyway, I don't know how effective it is. I know that he converted a lot of people, or he at least made a lot of people feel. I think he did. I think he saved thousands and thousands of kids from mind poisoning. I'd be willing to bet that a lot of his fans and followers would have been, or very, very well might have been, some of these poisoned kids. He obviously didn't get them all, but we have to know that he saved a bunch. So I'll go back. What would Charlie do? We've got to save some of these kids. We got to suck the poison out, That's probably not a good thing. Good way to put it. I'm thinking about a rattlesnake bite. But we got to do it. Anyway, that's enough. Thanks for listening.
Unnecessary